Hey, it's Stuart Sutton at Georgetown, Texas Real Estate. We're going to cover the 5 most important things, and just by chance, the 5 most expensive things. This kind of came to my attention because I've replaced a few things on some properties, including water heaters, and they are not cheap anymore. There was a day when you could install a water heater at a very reasonable rate, and you just can't do that anymore. It is upwards of $2,000 just to have a typical normal water heater installed for you. So the other items, which are far more expensive than that, are really important to make sure you're familiar with the current condition when you close on the home. Let's jump in. The roof is a big one. You know the old saying here in Texas, and that is, you've either had hail damage or you're going to have hail damage. Very few of us actually pay for a full roof anymore. It does happen, of course, but you want to make sure that you are in a situation where you know what's going on with that roof. So if the inspector red flags it and says, hey, it might have hail damage, I wouldn't just depend on the seller's insurance adjuster. I have a personal policy, and that is never ever do I let an insurance adjuster on my roof unless my roofer has accompanied them. Now, I'm not picking on insurance adjusters or insurance companies. However, I've had situations, too many to count, where my roofer had to not coerce to do something they shouldn't, coerce to recognize that that's hail damage and not something else like blistering. So you want to make sure that roof is in good condition. You want to make sure that your new insurance company isn't going to come back and say, wait a minute, that roof has a problem. You want to make sure when you close that you are in good standing with that roof, because they are not inexpensive if you have to replace one. Foundation obviously is another big issue. Now, you can have a foundation problem and it can be relatively modest, or you can have a very large foundation problem. Now, there are certain areas in Central Texas and Georgetown, Round Rock, Austin, where foundation movement is more prone to happen than other areas. So be very cognizant of that. And if the inspector red flags the foundation, make sure that you are well taken care of. And here's what I mean by that. It's very easy to depend on a foundation company because they're very inexpensive, sometimes free, to come out and check your foundation. But I would opt for an engineer who would come out and write the report identifying whether a foundation company needs to come out. And here's why. I know that foundation companies don't want to hear this, but it has happened, and I want to make sure that anybody that deals with me is aware. Foundation company comes out, they say, yes, you need work. Here's the bid. I expressed some concern over that because it didn't seem to me like there was a problem. We had an engineer come out who said, wait a minute, there's no problem here. There's no work that needs to be done. We put that information in front of the foundation company, and they say, that's fine, we'll shred the report. Now, I'm not questioning the integrity of foundation companies in any way. What I'm saying is that if it's really close, an engineer might say, hey, this is within tolerance, there should be no problems. Whereas a foundation company might say, hey, you'd be better off to go ahead and fix this, because that's what they do. So be sure that you understand that foundation's integrity at the time of closing. And I would do that through an engineer instead of a foundation company if you have a choice. And there's no reason you shouldn't have a choice. Hope this makes sense. Now, the HVAC, heating, venting, and air conditioning, is the next very expensive item. Be sure that you're aware of the age and the condition of that system. If the inspector red flags it and you have an expert come out, make sure you get, well, in my opinion, more than one opinion. Because one opinion does not a fact make. I have had many situations where an air conditioning professional recommended, and this is one example, 3 complete new units on a house, and it was close to $20,000. The second opinion was, well, you could get 3, but you don't really need 2. You truly need 1, and the other 2 seem like they will last a while. Well, of course, one party thought it would be great to have 3 units, and the other party thought it would be great to only have to replace 1. But having more than one opinion and understanding where you stand with that system is very, very important. Next is electrical. Electrical panels and related electrical system. GFCIs, arc fault, the panel, things like that. Now, here's something that everyone really ought to be aware of. Common practice in a particular service does not always match up to current code. In other words, roofs were put on a certain way here in Central Texas for many, many years, and inspectors always flagged them as being done wrong. But it was actually right. It was the common practice, and it worked very well, better than actually what inspectors were writing up. So that can happen with electric panels as well. If an inspector says, hey, there's problems here, get an electrician to come look and either say there's a problem or there's not a problem. I've seen buyers ask for items that are actually not needed, and a seller finds it pretty difficult to pay money to fix something that does not need to be fixed. So just be aware of that. Plumbing, and I mentioned this when we started, water heaters just are not as inexpensive as they used to be. So be sure that you understand the water heater. Bringing it up to code, that's really arguable between the buyer and the seller. The way we typically look at it is when that water heater is replaced, whether it's now or 5 years from now, it can be brought up to code and have all the different additions at that point. But that's between you and the buyer or seller, whichever side you're on. But as a buyer, you need to be aware of the condition and working order of that water heater and related plumbing items. I'm going to throw in a couple bonuses here because these aren't inexpensive anymore either. Appliances, ranges, dishwashers, disposals, and microwaves are typically going to go with the house. Personal property is usually washer, dryer, and refrigerator, so the inspector is not even going to check those. But because dishwashers, ranges are not inexpensive anymore, just make sure that you're aware of the age and the condition of those particular items. And one more that I'll throw in there is termites. Termite inspections are an absolute. You should always have one. Now, keep in mind there's two different definitions of a problem. One is conducive conditions, meaning there's no termites, but this is the most likely way they enter into a property and cause problems. The other is there is active termite activity. So be careful about that. I have had a situation as recently as a few months ago where one termite company came in and bid close to $2,000. Another one came in and bid over $2,000. Another one came in and bid, get this, less than $300. And the reason was because the first two were wanting to do the entire job, which wasn't needed, and the third one was bidding taking care of the current issue, which was needed. So be careful about that, and don't let termites scare you. Old saying in Central Texas, you've either had termites or you're going to have termites. So I hope this was helpful. Again, these 5 most expensive things are pretty important, and then the bonuses that we added are nice to know about as well. And if you need referrals for any of those, I have very experienced, very honest, and very diligent professionals from each of those areas. Now, I did throw another video up here. This one has to do with our buyer guarantee. So if you like the idea of having a guarantee as a home buyer, take a look at it. If you like what you're seeing, subscribe, and I hope to see you on the next video.